welcome to another video. So it's Pride Month. I decided that this month, well, I read queer books quite a lot. About at least 50% of my reading is queer books anyway. So I thought that rather than going through like all of the queer books on my TBR or something like that, what I would do instead would be, I'm going to go through, I've got in front of me 2 stacks. I have got 10 books on my TBR that are queer, and I have got 10 books that I have read this year, which are also queer. And I'm going to kind of match them. This makes sense in my head. It might not make sense in person, but we will see. So it's Pride Month. Pride, to be honest, I think it's important to read queer books year round, not just in June. But of course, I am going to try and be reading more queer books in June. Like I said, about 50% of my reading is queer in some way. Not every book that I read necessarily will have the main character as queer, but saying that as well, I read quite a lot of thrillers, crime, mystery, and they are genres that really need to do better in terms of queer representation. I feel like fantasy, sci-fi, romance, kind of just general contemporary are doing pretty well at have a good proportion of queer books like readily available on the market. Crime, thriller, mystery, not so much. In fact, I think I've only got one crime thriller on this pile of books that I've read this year that has queer rep, and yeah, I think we're kind of stretching for the one that I've got matching with it to call it. I think it's more in like, I would say probably more in I think it is a thriller. But yeah, basically crime, thriller, mystery, do better. Anywho, so let's get into the books. The first book is one that I read this year, which is Lockjaw by Matteo L. Sorelli. This is a YA horror, and in it we have got multiple trans characters, we have got non-binary characters, we have got, I believe there is a gay character, I actually can't remember now off the top of my head, but there are multiple queer characters, and this is a horror. I don't want to explain too much about it. This book reminds me of The Last House on Needless Street, where if you know the plot, you've ruined the plot, if you know what I mean. You know, you kind of want to go into it pretty blind. And this is a book that I would say you trust the process. You read it and you get halfway through and you're like, I have no idea what is going on. You keep on reading it and by the end everything makes sense. Twists galore, but highly recommend Lockjaw by Matteo L. Sorelli. And the book that I'm kind of matching to that one, which is on my TBR, is The Outrage by William Hussey. So this one is a YA dystopian. I'll read the synopsis. Welcome to England. Here there are rules for everything. What to say, what to think, who to hate, who to love. Your safety is assured, so long as you follow the rules. Gabriel is a natural born rule breaker, and his biggest crime of all, being gay. Gabriel's secret must be kept, not only to protect himself, but protect his boyfriend Eric, because Eric's father is the chief inspector at Degenerative Investigations, the man who poses the biggest threat to both their lives. So this is a dystopian. I believe it's basically about a world where obviously being gay is a crime, and about basically being queer in a world where being queer is illegal. This one does sound fantastic. I do really, really want to get to this one. It's one of those books that's been on my TBR for a couple of years. Every time I pick it up, every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, I really want to read that. But whenever I'm looking at my shelves, I kind of skip past it. So I really do need to prioritise this one because it looks fantastic. Next up, I'm going to talk about a book that, again, I read earlier this year, which is This Love by Lottie Jeffs. This is a contemporary, it's kind of like a contemporary version of One Day. We follow our 2 characters, May and Ari, who met at university, and we basically follow them over the sort of next 10, 15 years of their lives. So we see them develop from like this love, this platonic friendship type love. We see them fall in love with various people. We see them fall in love with their families, like, their parents, and also with having children of their own, and falling in love with families like that. It's an absolutely like celebration of the queer experience. I will say just one little content warning for this one. There are quite a number of content warnings, but one that I will highlight is there is an amount of biphobia in this book. It's only for a small portion and it gets resolved fairly quickly, but I did find that a little bit jarring because it is such a celebration of queer love. But like I said, this book is such a fantastic celebration of the queer experience and queer love and the different types of love that you go through in your life, especially in your life as a queer person. And I'm kind of matching this one slightly strangely against Mad Honey by Jodie Pickle and Jennifer Finley Boylan. I really want to read this one. Again, this one's on my TBR. This one follows two families who move back to this town, and I believe one of the characters is trans. I know one of the authors is trans, but I believe one of the characters is, and that there's a murder at the centre of this. And again, in a typical sort of Jodie Pickle book, it's the kind of centered on this event and what would you do in that situation. I again desperately want to get to this one. I think it looks fantastic. I think it sounds amazing. I really want to read it. But it's another one that I just skip past. I really need to, I think I need to like move some of these books on my shelves to somewhere where I'm going to see them more readily and be like, yes, I need to read that one. Next up, a book that I read earlier this year is Feybound by Sarah Alarifi. This one is a fantasy. We are following our characters. In here we have got sapphic characters, we have got non-binary characters. I think non-binary, I don't think we've got trans characters, but we potentially do. I can't remember now, I read it a few months ago. But it's a really, really fun story. So in this one, our main characters are elves. In this world, there are elves, humans, and fae, but the fae are thought to be mythical. Anyway, the elves, our main characters are elves. They get banished from the elven lands, and they end up in the fae lands with these thought to be mythical beings. Really, really great story. I can't wait to continue this series. And the one I'm pairing with this one is a manga. And it's Dick Fight Island by Ruben Ike. This is a fantasy manga. It is about these islands where you fight with your dick, and the first one to come loses. That's all I'm going to say on that one. I haven't read it yet. I do want to because it looks hilarious. But it is queer. And yeah, what more can I say? It's called Dick Fight Island. Like, I feel like that tells you enough about it. The next one I'm going to talk about is Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. All of the foiling has come off my copy. So Cassandra Clare's books do tend to have multiple queer characters in them, and Lady Midnight is no exception. While the main couple, the main like relationship that we're seeing in here is a straight couple, sort of. We don't really have, this one doesn't have like a strong romance plotline, but we kind of do see these two people who kind of fancy each other. They are both straight. But this one we do have a side character who is gay, and also a side character who is bi. Those two are in a relationship, of course, Magnus Bane and Alec. And we do, I believe further on in the series, I think we have a poly relationship. I might be wrong. But there is quite a lot of queer rep in Cassandra Clare. I will be honest, it's not always the best rep in the world, but it exists. And it's okay, if you know what I mean. Like, it's not, it does tend to be very much you are either straight or you are gay or you are bi. You know, there isn't a lot of like subtleties within Cassandra Clare's writing. I do love Cassandra Clare. I think that her books are just popcorn reads and I really enjoy them. But again, there is always some form of queer representation in her books as well. And the book that I am matching against Lady Midnight is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. So this one is a sci-fi. And in this one we have got, and again, I think this is where sci-fi can take queer normative and queer representation to a whole new level. Fantasy can do it as well, but I think sci-fi can do it in an even better way. In this one we have got many people from different worlds. So we have got people who are non-binary, we have got a lot of trans, we have got a lot of queer, we've got poly relationships. There is so much queer representation in this book and this series. So I am very, very excited to read this one. Again, it is one that I keep on looking at and I'm like, I'll be totally honest with you, it's bigger than I thought it would be. I don't know why, but in my head this was like a really short book, and then even though I physically own the book, I always pick it up and I'm like, oh, that's a full-length novel. Which, I mean, when I'm pairing it against Lady Midnight, which is clearly 5 times as long, who knows. Anyway, next on we're getting on to the romances. And a romance that I read earlier this year was Happy Character. One of the main characters in this book is Sapphic, and again is I would say decent representation. Emily Henry does typically write straight characters, so I do enjoy seeing some queer representation in her books. And I'm pairing that one against Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, which I don't know if Delilah is bi or sapphic because I haven't read it yet, but she does meet a woman and we end up with a female-female relationship, which we love to see. I'm very excited to read this one. This is a recent purchase and I am very, very hyped to get to it. Next, the only thriller that I've really got on my list is Moral Injuries by Christy Watson. So I read this book earlier this year, absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. So this one we're following 3 doctors, and something happened when they were at university and they have kind of hidden and kept this quiet their whole lives. We're now following them 25 years later. They're all practicing doctors. They all have got, well, 2 of them have got children of their own and the third is in a sapphic relationship and is trying to adopt. However, the children, something similar happens to the 3 children as happened to our main characters, like I said, 25 years ago, and so everything kind of comes back up to a head. The story itself was fantastic, kept me gripped literally from page 1. But the sapphic relationship in here and the fact that it wasn't a kind of, you know, a romance, it wasn't like a meet cute. It was seeing these 2 women in a relationship and dealing with the pressures of trying to adopt a child. That I thought was absolutely fantastic and highly recommend this book anyway, but particularly recommend it if you want some queer rep in your thrillers. Now I'm pairing this one against Hyde by Kirsten White. I'll be totally honest, I don't know what queer rep this one contains other than, according to Storygraph, it contains queer rep. But this one is a thriller. It follows, I don't know how many, this is an arc and I don't have a synopsis on here. Oh, it literally says on the back. It follows 14 people who have got to hide in a fun fair for a week, and I believe the one who comes out at the end is the winner. Something like that. I don't know. I don't know what is hunting them, but I do want to get to it. It does sound really fascinating. I have heard mixed things about this, so I have sort of been putting it off until, I'm going to say the hype, but like people have stopped talking about it so that I don't go in with previous like conceptions on it. Back to fantasy. One of my top reads of the year so far has been Girl Goddess Queen by B. Fitzgerald. And in this one of our main characters is bi. And I feel like the way that this character explains their sexuality is, it's almost it's almost on par with the Schitt's Creek rosé analogy, which if you know, you know. But I mean, honestly, I was just obsessed with everything in this book. I think B. Fitzgerald's writing is incredible. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and the bi rep in here I thought was brilliant. It was great. I had a good time reading it. And I'm pairing that one with Witch King by Martha Wells. So again, this one has got a lot of fantastic rep in it. Our main character is, I guess, transcoded because they maintain their gender regardless of which body they are inhabiting. So our main character obviously can inhabit multiple bodies. So even when they're in a female body, they are male. So yeah, I guess like I said, kind of like transcoded, but there were also, I believe, non-binary characters. I believe there were also queer relationships in here. I might be wrong, but again, this one sounds fantastic. My friend really, really highly recommends this one to me. I don't really know what it's about. It is a fantasy. I'll read you out the synopsis because I have no clue about this. After being murdered, his consciousness dormant and unaware of the passing of time while confined in an elaborate water trap, Kai wakes to find a lesser mage attempting to harness Kai's magic to his own advantage. That was never going to go well. But why was Kai imprisoned in the first place? What has changed in the world since his assassination? And why does the Rising World Coalition appear to be growing in influence? Kai will need to pull his allies close and draw on all of his pain magic if he's to answer even the least of these questions. He's not going to like the answers. Sounds brilliant. Very excited to read it. Moving on to, I guess, like YA middle grade, I've got Rick Riordan, The Hidden Oracle. This one has got some fantastic queer rep in it. The whole Percy Jackson series does include queer rep, but this one we have got a gay couple who, to be honest, we met them in Percy Jackson, and they sort of got together in the second series, Heroes of Olympus, and now we are seeing them as a couple in Trials of Apollo. Do I tell you who they are? I don't really feel like it's a spoiler, but I'm not going to tell you who they are. But again, great to see a gay couple just enjoying life as much as they can in the Percy Jackson universe. I call this one like a middle grade YA crossover. I think it's kind of aimed at like 13-year-olds, so it's that kind of like upper middle grade, lower YA crossover. And again, another YA, Boy Queen by George Lester. So this one we are following our main character who is gay and is going to embrace drag. It is like, I think it is just a celebration of drag, which sounds fantastic. I want to read it. It sounds really, really fun. Another romance on my list, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This one I've got on my list that this book has a bi character. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which character it is. It's not one of the main characters. So I can't give you very much information on the queer rep in this one because I have forgotten about it because I am down. But this book is fantastic. We are following our main character whose car breaks down in a small town. She meets this guy, they end up hooking up, and then they kind of just sort of fall for each other over the next like few months. The one thing about this book that stopped it being a 5-star is it's got this like strange, fantastical plot line which doesn't really fit, in my opinion, to the rest of the book. but I did still have a great time. And pairing on that one, I've got My Own Worst Enemy by Lily Linden. This one is a contemporary romance. We are following a woman who is always being beaten. She is an actress, and she's always been kind of like beaten to her apart by someone who looks just like her. And they end up being a kind of like enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers. I'm excited to read this one. It looks like it's going to be really fun. And my 10th book that I read this year with Queer Rep, it wasn't my 10th book, but the one I'm going to talk about is Jade War by Fonda Lee. So in this one, a character that we have met in Jade City comes out as, well, he doesn't like fully come out, but he gets into a relationship with another man. And again, there isn't any labeling, so I don't know whether we would say he would be bi or gay, but he's in the only relationship we have seen him in has been with a man. And I think it's a really fantastic relationship that we see between the two of them. This is the Greenbone Saga. It starts with Jade City, and it is following a gang who control Jade, which basically gives you kind of like slightly enhanced powers. It's a bit of like a kind of mafia story. I really enjoy it. It is very slow paced, very big world building, and a great time. And the final book that I'm recommending that is on my TBR this month is Wolf Song by TJ Klune. So Wolf Song is, I don't really know what it's about. A queer Twilight, maybe? It is about this guy who met this family who are werewolves. Ox ends up falling for one of the sons. And yeah, basically I think it is just a relationship between the two guys. And I have heard it described as like Twilight if Bella didn't suck and she chose the wolves. Anywho, that was my recommendation of the 10 books, well, the 10 books, 10 of the books that I have read this year that are queer, and 10 books on my TBR that I'm excited to read as soon as I can that are also queer. If you like this video, please do leave me a like, subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!